So not too long ago, Disney just dropped the final trailer for their next big event film of the year, that being Tron Ares, which is supposed to come out on October 10th. Tron Ares has admittedly been a somewhat divisive topic leading up to its release, mostly because of its main star, that being Jared Leto. When this film was initially announced to be in production back in 2023, and Jared Leto was announced to be the main star, a lot of people were very skeptical of it, and rightfully so, but decided to wait to see if things would develop further. And while most people don't like the fact that Jared Leto is starring in this film, there have been some more promising developments for Tron Ares overall. It looks like Jeff Bridges will be returning in his role as Kevin Flynn for the first 2 Tron films, which is something that people have been positively receptive to. This is the character that kicked off the franchise with the first Tron film and continued the legacy of it in Tron Legacy with his son being the main character, so it makes sense he would return here and people are happy he's coming back. On top of this, a lot of people have expressed positivity for the remaining cast outside of Jared Leto since there are good actors here, such as Greta Lee, Cameron Monaghan, Evan Peters, and so many more. There's also been a lot of praise for both the visuals and the soundtrack for Tron Ares since 9 Inch Nails has stepped in to do the score and a lot of people are praising their work. Overall, while there is still a lot of skepticism going into Tron Ares, and rightfully so, it does seem like there's a lot more optimism going into it now than there was before. However, a different kind of hate train has popped up for this movie recently, and not for the reasons you might think. While the big elephant in the room for perhaps the biggest flaw with this movie is still the fact that Jared Leto is still in it, that's actually not the thing that this hate train is mad at. In particular, it seems that a lot of the hate currently getting levied at this movie isn't even about Jared Leto, but the fact that people think this film has quote-unquote girl bosses in it. And they also think this film is stripped of masculinity and it's gonna be quote-unquote woke propaganda. Oh boy. I'm talking about none other than anti-woke critics who really seem to want to push the narrative of Tron Ares being woke propaganda. I find this incredibly funny because as of me making this video, Tron Ares isn't even out yet. The earliest you can even see Tron Ares is gonna be on October 8th with an early access ticket, so it really makes you wonder how these guys are even getting the idea that Tron Ares is gonna be quote-unquote woke and full of girl bosses. Oh no, woman scary! This has definitely become a pattern with a lot of the anti-woke grifters. They will often try to spread a narrative on a film before it even releases. Funny enough, this is something that they themselves have even admitted to before.
Welcome to every video we make. We use one little thing and then we build the narrative out of it.
They will often try to create a sort of anti-woke hate train for a movie before it even comes out to try to sell this idea to their audience that this film is gonna fail because it's quote-unquote woke. And just like them, they should try to sell their audience on the idea that they should hate it as well because they don't like it and they want it to fail. I think one of the biggest examples of this happening from this year especially was none other than James Gunn's Superman. This was a film that really seemed to have a giant, massively forced hate train behind it, especially from not only anti-woke grifters, but also Zack Snyder fans who, if I'm being totally real, are very notorious in their own right as well. These are the guys that were so upset at Zack Snyder not directing any more DC movies, they tried to completely sabotage James Gunn's Superman at every turn in the most insane ways. There was even an instruction pamphlet put on the Snyder Cut subreddit that told people to post spoilers everywhere and review bomb the movie on most review sites. These guys have always seemed like the most extreme parodies of comic book fans out there since the very beginning. Together with them and the anti-woke grifters, there was a pretty ridiculous and very forced hate campaign going behind Superman all the way leading up to its release this July. It was honestly probably one of the most dragged out hate campaigns I've ever seen for a movie. With hate campaigns like this, they're not coming from any sort of passion for the source material or not even really wanting any real discourse about it either. It usually comes off more like them trying to create an echo chamber of their own hate for the movie and trying to prove to everybody that they're right about this movie and that you're not. And instead of being open-minded about this movie, you should just hate it with them even though it's not even out yet. It's honestly a pretty ridiculous and very childish thing, and it's definitely something we've seen more and more of lately as something that'll try to pass itself off as quote-unquote film discourse or media analysis. Even though ultimately it's really neither of those things. These people don't really care about film discourse, they'd rather try to push their own agenda with their content and get mad at any and all women and people of color that they see in the media. And also apparently they'd rather try to claim that the Muppets and Sesame Street have now gone quote-unquote woke because of Disney and HBO. Yes, this is somehow real. Huh, it's not like Jim Henson had a gay man playing Scooter and he was loved by the entirety of Jim Henson's crew. Clearly, it's only now that the Muppets have gone quote-unquote woke, right? Get real. So today, I want to talk about different kinds of anti-woke hate trains that come about before a film releases, and other kinds of grifter hate trains as well, why they're not real film discourse or media analysis, and what the real discourse of films should be before they actually come out overall. Because obviously on the surface, there's nothing wrong with actually just voicing your concerns on a movie and trying to discuss it before it comes out, but there's a difference between doing that and trying to sell a narrative on a movie and trying to push an agenda. That's when the negativity in simple discourse stops being any kind of actual discourse and ends up being more of a way for a person to try to prove everyone they're right and that they should hate this film as well, just like them. And usually by that point, it becomes sort of a forced hate train to either push an agenda or use for some other means of personal gain. To start, let's look at the example I brought up before, that being Tron Ares, since this is definitely a film that a lot of the anti-woke grifters have been going after. One particular anti-woke grifter who made a video talking about Tron Ares was none other than Disparu. Surprisingly, I actually haven't covered Disparu yet on this channel before, but he is definitely one of the more notable anti-woke grifters, and I have seen some of his content. I was very surprised to see him of all people covering Tron Ares, however, since to my knowledge he hasn't expressed any previous interest in the Tron franchise. And this video of his does make it very obvious he just jumped on this topic because he saw a big movie with women in it and wanted to try to sell his audience on the idea of there being girl bosses in it. Let's see what he had to say.
With the first two trailers of Tron Ares, I was optimistic. It looked great visually. It had everything. Cars getting cut in half, planes stopping missiles, missiles trapping planes. The problem then was everything else, the side characters, things that the trailers just hinted at, which have later been confirmed. We had girl bosses on the good side, girl boss CEOs on the bad side.
Okay, so Disparu, what do you mean by girl boss exactly? Do you mean just a woman who simply exists in the film? Do you mean a woman who seems like a fighter type? Do you mean female programmers like the two women you were just talking about here? If you actually ask any of these guys what they think a girl boss is after the dozens and dozens of times they've overused this term, I guarantee you none of them would be able to give a concrete definition to this word. Is Yelena from Thunderbolts a girl boss? Is the main girl in Rings of Power a girl boss? Is the CEO of Cracker Barrel a girl boss? Because funny enough, these are all different characters and people that they've given the girl boss label to before.
It's also filled with fake Punisher, feminist bitch.
With the embodiment of femininity that they reduced into warrior Galadriel wearing armor, slaying orcs, and becoming an insufferable girl boss.
This is a tale, a hilarious tale, of a female CEO that simply girl bossed too hard. Cracker Barrel stock has been in free fall over the past week after its idiot CEO admitted the biscuits and gravy chain is, quote, just not as relevant as it used to be.
So as a result, girl boss as a term is more a catch-all term that a lot of these guys use whenever they see any woman in a main role on screen. And thankfully, more people have been catching on to this lately, and the term has become much more of a red flag in recent memory. You can oftentimes pretty easily identify a grifter just based on how many times the word girl boss appears in their vocabulary.
Entertainment Weekly came out with an exclusive piece about Tron Ares, and the pictures are, well, they didn't help. As I said, if you're going to release exclusive new pictures about a movie, you would expect these would be key images of their most important characters to build hype. Well, you've heard Escape from New York, this looks like Escape from London.
What Disparu also isn't telling you here, however, is that this article he's citing from Entertainment Weekly is actually a direct interview with Greta Lee, who's playing the character of Eve Kim in this film. As a result, all the pictures that came with the article were all pictures of Greta Lee as the character of Eve Kim on the set of Tron Ares. This is a pretty normal thing to do given the fact that Greta Lee herself is the one being interviewed for this article, but of course Disparu has to try and spin this like it's some kind of girl boss moment. I also find this funny because both Entertainment Weekly and plenty of other publications have done a lot of articles leading up to Tron Ares' release that show plenty of just general pictures of the set and the film. But of course, as soon as Greta Lee gets an interview from Entertainment Weekly and her pictures are all over it, they automatically jump on that. Huh, very telling. Also, the title of this video confounds me. Since when was Tron ever considered a masculine franchise? Even since the very beginning, Tron has always been seen as one of the nerdiest of nerd franchises. The first film is literally about computer programmers and computers before any of that was even considered cool or interesting. You'd have a lot easier of a time trying to tell people that Star Wars or Indiana Jones or TMNT or He-Man were masculine franchises from this time, not Tron. In the 1980s, the kid with the Tron action figure is probably the one getting picked on, not the one with the Star Wars or TMNT action figure. Hence why it's good that mentality isn't a thing anymore, unless you're Disparu apparently and all you care about is masculinity. Obviously, Tron has a very dedicated following, and rightfully so, and it was ahead of the curve on a lot of things, especially in terms of how AI interacts with humanity, but in no way was it ever really considered a masculine franchise. Also, fun fact, the original Tron score was actually composed by a trans woman, which I get the feeling that Disparu probably isn't aware of that here. Huh, funny how that works.
Now, many people have said they have reservations about this movie because of Jared Leto. I don't know anything about him, and from that perspective, he doesn't seem to be the problem in this movie.
No, Jared Leto has 100% been the most problematic aspect of this movie since the very beginning, and that's actually why a lot of people have had reservations on it for a long time now. Jared Leto has been a very polarizing and very controversial figure for a long time now. Outside of having some genuinely awful performances and things like the Suicide Squad where he played Joker, and also things like Morbius where he played the lead role, Jared Leto has been on record for being a pretty difficult person to work with on set multiple times over. Like on the set of Morbius, where he always showed up in a wheelchair and took 40-minute bathroom breaks to quote-unquote stay in character. Or when he was playing the Joker and gave used condoms and a dead rat to a lot of his co-stars for his quote-unquote method acting. And that's not even getting into all the sexual misconduct he's been accused of, and the fact that he supposedly runs a cult on the island of Croatia. Wow, you really hit the jackpot here, Disney. Leto has always been the biggest issue with this film's production, and he's still the big thing that is causing a lot of people to hold their doubts about this film. It's not these quote-unquote girl bosses or anything else that you claim here.
With Tron Legacy ending with the company returning to its proper heritage of the owner's son, him bringing an AI program out who actually had the ability to be a real person into the real world, you'd expect that story to continue. What you wouldn't expect is a woke 2025 remake of Terminator 2, which seems to be what we're getting. Which is the closest comparison I can get to Tron's own described version of the story. So now, rather than the son owning the company and turning it to glory, Eve, who is in the pictures, is a programmer who turned Encon into a thriving company. Yes, that's right, it's not the son passing down the company through a patriarchal mechanism and him bringing glory to his heritage. No, it's the Clunge that did it. His son took over at the end of Tron Legacy. However, Ares will reveal that in the 14 years between films, Encom fell on hard times. In fact, it would have folded if not for the work of now CEO Eve Kim, the inventor of Fortnite, because it's not enough just to swap the main character, you have to destroy the masculine legacy as well.
This is one of the biggest things that has really bugged me regarding the discourse from the grifters surrounding Tron Ares. A lot of them seem to think that Garrett Hedlund won't be reprising his role as Sam Flynn in the upcoming film. The thing is though, there isn't really actually any evidence to support this claim at all, it's just something they've kind of made up. Neither Garrett nor Disney have confirmed nor denied that Garrett won't be starring in this film at all. If anything, there's actually been a lot of speculation that Garrett will be in this film, and that's largely due to how he's conducted interviews when he's asked about Tron Ares.
We've got Ares on the horizon. I know Disney's got their eyes on you to keep their secrets close, but I'm curious if you're allowed to share if you've had any conversations about coming back, because I would love to know what Sam and Cora are up to, especially since Kevin's coming back for Ares.
Let's just let that ambiguity rest right up there in the ether.
Now, as you saw there, Garrett left it pretty open and ambiguous and didn't really answer the question. This on its own wouldn't really mean anything because maybe Garrett just doesn't want to talk about Tron Ares, but it's interesting when you compare his response to his co-star's response, Bruce Boxleitner. Bruce Boxleitner played Tron in the original film and also reprised his role as Alan Bradley and played Rinsler in the second film. Funny enough, he was actually very open about not starring in Tron at a recent convention here.
I do want to, I'm going to put in a shameless plug here. Please go see Tron Ares. I'm not in it, but please go. I want you to support that movie because Tron seems to have an interesting relationship here. They like it, they don't like it. I don't know. I want it to succeed because the original Tron wants to keep being the original Tron and not be the forgotten original Tron.
Now this is interesting because Bruce does seem to very adamantly confirm that he's not going to be in Tron Ares and that if you want to see him in future Tron stuff, you should go see this movie, which you should. If you are truly a Tron fan, this film is very dependent on you to succeed. But I do find it interesting that Bruce was able to give a very concrete answer while Garrett didn't really do that. Could this possibly be hinting at something? Could Sam Flynn actually appear in Tron Ares? We don't really know yet. Although definitely the possibilities are looking very likely here. But ultimately, we won't really know until the movie actually comes out. However, a lot of the anti-woke grifters seem to be so bent on the fact that Sam Flynn is confirmed not to appear in Tron Ares when that's just not really true at all. There's never been anything documented at all that says that. If anything, we've gotten more hints that have caused people to speculate that he will appear in the film, even though that's still not confirmed either. The truth is, there's still a lot about Tron Ares that we don't really know yet because Disney has been oddly secretive about a lot of things in this film. So it kind of just looks like these guys are grasping at straws with the little pieces of information that Disney has given out to try to create some complaint about this movie, which of course is par for the course with grifters anyway. Ultimately, the only reason they're trying to cling to this thing of Sam Flynn not being in the movie and there being a lack of masculine legacy present here is because they want to complain about girl bosses. And for some reason, they don't want to point to the real issue with this film, that being Jared Leto. Yeah, clearly this guy isn't the problematic one, it's just the girl bosses. Give me a break.
We are now hitting movies with plots so ridiculous that when you just repeat them to an audience, you come across as a liar. Oh, he's just being hyperbolic. It won't be that bad.
Okay, I get the feeling that Disparu didn't really watch Tron 1 or 2 here based on what he's saying. If he'd actually watched them, he would probably know that Tron 1 and 2 are both tapping into the idea of what mankind can do with AI and what the relationship with AI should be. That also is exactly what Tron Ares is tapping into as well. So if you think this plot sounds insane or ridiculous or like somebody would say it isn't real, then you may as well say that about the first two Tron movies as well. It honestly really comes off throughout this entire video that Disparu isn't really a Tron fan at all and he just jumped on this topic to try to have something to complain about in regards to girl bosses. Funny enough, two people that have been also complaining about this alleged issue with Tron Ares are actually two anti-woke pick-me girls. Wow, the absolute irony of seeing two women complain about the lack of quote-unquote masculine legacy and also complaining about girl bosses. The grift is absolutely real. The two women who've been trying to push this girl boss narrative about Tron Ares are none other than Jesterabel and also Nerd Cookies. Now I'm gonna play two clips from these two creators and show you just how similar their talking points are.
Ares will reveal that in the 14 years between films, NCOM fell on hard times. In fact, it would have folded if not for the work of the now CEO, Eve Kim. Now she wants to take things to the next level by using the legacy the company was built on, Kevin Flynn's work on the grid, and evolving it. How is this not disrupting canon if you make Sam Flynn a failure?
But apparently, as Tron Ares begins, this main male protagonist failed. According to Gizmodo, with official word of the plot of Tron Ares, Sam Flynn at the end of Tron Legacy was supposed to take over his father's company NCOM with a lot of optimism for the future. However, Tron Ares will reveal that in the 14 years between the films, NCOM fell on hard times. In fact, it would have folded if not for the work of the now CEO, Eve Kim.
Wow, gee, notice any similarities there? It's almost like they saw the exact same article, decided to read it off on a screen and regurgitate the same anti-woke talking points they've probably heard everyone else say. Way to cover your tracks there, guys. However, I actually find Nerd Cookie's video on this subject a lot more interesting than Jesterabel's, and quite frankly, I don't want to have to look at that face for the rest of this segment. Much like Disparu, both women do want to seem to distract from the real issue with this movie, that being Jared Leto, by just talking about girl bosses. But I find Nerd Cookie's take on this especially baffling since for some reason she tries to compare Tron Ares to the Star Wars sequel. And she also tries to claim that Eve Kim is going to be the new Rey Skywalker for some reason. Let's see all of what she has to say.
Maybe if Tron Legacy had done better at the box office, they would have moved forward, but it wasn't a resounding success for them, and they just plunked down billions and billions on Star Wars and shortly after Marvel, wish we could say that was worth it. Not only do we not get that original Tron 3 film, we got the Star Wars sequels. However, Ares will reveal that in the 14 years between films, NCOM fell on hard times. In fact, it would have folded if not for the work of the now CEO, Eve Kim, played by Greta Lee. Eve helped reinvent one of NCOM's many classic titles, Space Paranoids, as an online massive multiplayer game in the vein of Fortnite, and it changed everything. Now she wants to take things to the next level by using the legacy the company was built on, Kevin Flynn's work on the grid, and evolving it. So it's astounding to me that they said, we're not disrupting canon. How is this not disrupting canon if you make Sam Flynn a failure?
Okay, first of all, that article never said that Sam Flynn was a failure. All it said is that Eve Kim is a programmer that made a Fortnite version of Space Paranoids. For all we know, during the 14 years between Tron Legacy and Tron Ares, maybe Sam Flynn stepped away for a bit to actually try to figure out where his dad went. Cause, as real Tron fans would probably know, there's actually a short film that is packaged with the Blu-ray of Tron Legacy that takes place after the events of that film. This short film is called Tron the Next Day, and it fills in some of the backstory between Tron and Tron Legacy, and also shows what happens after the events of Tron Legacy when Sam comes back to the user world. And funny enough, the end of this short film actually hints that Kevin Flynn might still be alive somewhere in the grid, and that Sam is aware of this, since at the end of the short film he shows off a shirt that says Flynn lives. There's also been some clues that seem to hint at this at the end of the film too that people have picked up on, where Sam actually transfers the entirety of the grid onto a flash drive. Before Tron Ares was even officially confirmed at all, a lot of people were already speculating that maybe a copy or fragment of Kevin Flynn's consciousness was still alive on this flash drive. And funny enough, what do we see in this trailer? A ghost-like version of Kevin Flynn on the old grid. So really, the more likely answer, and the answer that could possibly be in this film, we don't really know much yet, is that Sam Flynn was actually looking for a way to get his dad out of the grid. So really, it's kind of just best to wait till the movie actually comes out and then judge it then and actually see what the story actually has to say. But for some reason, Nerd Cookie seems to be jumping to conclusions and thinks that Sam Flynn automatically failed to live up to the masculine legacy of Tron. Maybe just wait till the movie actually comes out and then judge it, rather than repeating a bunch of anti-woke grifting talking points. All this article really says is that during the 14 years between Tron Legacy and Tron Ares, the company, Encom, fell on hard times somehow, and during this time period, it was Eve Kim, Greta Lee's character, that was able to help boost the company back up by making a Fortnite version of Space Paranoids. That's it. Nowhere in here does it say that Sam Flynn drove the company into the ground. You are completely jumping to conclusions. Again, for all we know, maybe Sam Flynn is off trying to get Kevin Flynn back out of the grid that he's trapped in. Or maybe he's off in hiding trying to plan something against the Dillingers, since it seems like they have a very big role in this film. We don't really know. It's kind of just best to keep open-minded and not jump to conclusions about some vague article like this. Okay, editing Noah here. Guess what happened just as I thought I was done talking about Nerd Cookies and her awful grift? Yep, she makes a new tweet just as I was uploading this. And guess who responds to her tweet? Yep, you guessed it, Disparu. I swear, you cannot make this stuff up at all. Where there's one grifter, there's almost always another not far behind. But her tweet is absolutely hilarious to me because she says, apparently the writers of Tron Ares don't think people care enough about the characters of the Tron universe to warrant the continuation of their stories. She says this while quoting an article from IGN that's comparing Star Wars to Tron. I wonder what happens if we actually look at this article and do our research, which I don't think Nerd Cookies did here. Oh, what a surprise! All it's saying is that Tron has a very dedicated fandom, but it's not nearly as big as the Star Wars fandom. Which, what do you know, is completely true. So you better either A, actually read the article so you don't look like a complete fool when posting about it, or B, not intentionally misrepresent an article when anyone can click on it and see that you're not saying what's actually in it. Cause clearly, one of these two things happened here. And knowing Nerd Cookies, I'm kinda leaning towards the latter there. The grift is unreal. I think you might want some milk, Nerd Cookies, cause you just got dunked on multiple times. This is generally par for the course with a lot of grifters overall. They will take any piece of information they can and try to twist it to meet their own agenda. In the case of both Disparu and Nerd Cookies, they've tried to take this article and twist it to make it look like there's a girlboss thing going on in Tron Ares, when there really isn't any evidence for that. Funny enough, at the very bottom of this article, just like Nerd Cookies herself did just read, it even says that Eve Kim still wants to adhere to Kevin Flynn's legacy and build upon that. What do you know? Doesn't sound like Kevin Flynn's masculine legacy is getting demolished to me. Sounds like everyone's being pretty respectful about that and everything that came before too. Which also is probably a pretty big reason we're seeing both the 1982 grid and the 2010 grid featured in this film. There was even a trailer that Disney did not too long ago showing the legacy of Kevin Flynn and showing everything that has happened previously that is built up to Tron Ares. Ares. I really don't know how these people can keep trying to push the girl boss narrative here. The point is, we don't really know much about this movie at all still, so it really is just best to go in and actually see what happens here. Maybe legacy characters will appear, maybe they won't. We don't really know anything yet. But for some reason, Nerd Cookie seems to have come up with this idea for the plot for the film, even though we don't even know anything about it yet. It's kind of unbelievable.
Tron isn't close to the levels of Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Marvel as far as its commercial acclaim, but if those things can fail, if Star Wars can fail, if Indiana Jones can lose money, why do you think the same approach for Tron would work? It's literally the same thing with the sequel trilogy. Luke is a failure, Han and Leia are estranged, bad parents, and to replace them, we have these characters that we couldn't care about.
Huh? How are you comparing Rey Skywalker to Eve Kim? Rey Skywalker is a character that plenty of people are familiar with, for better or for worse at this point, that got 3 films to herself. Eve Kim is a character that we don't even know that much about at all, that's in a movie that doesn't come out for another 9 days. Where exactly is the comparison here? Unless Nerd Cookies pulled a Steins Gate and traveled through time to go see Tron Ares and then traveled back to warn us about it, but I kinda really doubt that. I guess when you make tweets like this trying to assume an entire film's plot just based on one song title on its soundtrack, the Tron community tends to not take you too seriously. Overall, the anti-woke hate train for Tron Ares isn't really addressing any real issues to the film, like Jared Leto, and instead just trying to push the idea of girl bosses being in this movie. There's no real critique here, and honestly also just a lot of major assumptions being made about this film in general. I guess the lesson here is wait for the film to actually come out, then make fair judgments on it. Then people won't obviously see that you're a grifter trying to bank off of hating a film before it even comes out. Tron Ares is definitely the movie that is seeing the most of this recently, since it's the movie that's coming out the soonest now, but there's also other movies that are supposed to be coming out that have seen a lot of forced hate trains recently as well. Funny enough, one person who's been notable for creating a lot of forced hate trains against upcoming movies is none other than Ranting for Vengeance, aka everyone's favorite 15-year-old try-hard anti-woke edgelord. Dang, that's a mouthful of a title. In particular, 2 movies he seems upset at currently are Spider-Man Brand New Day, which doesn't come out till next year, and The Batman Part 2, which doesn't come out till 2027. However, it looks like Ranting for Vengeance has already decided that both of these are going to be woke propaganda, despite the fact he has pretty much nothing to base on here because these films don't even have trailers. Spider-Man Brand New Day has had some videos showing behind the scenes filming of the movie, but no real trailer yet. And The Batman Part 2 has basically nothing except for confirmation that the script is done and filming has begun. How exactly is Ranting for Vengeance gonna determine that these are woke propaganda, I wonder? I discussed his Spider-Man video a bit in a different video of mine, and a lot of his complaints just boil down to actors he discovered were in the movie, and also him being weirdly anti-Semitic towards John Bernthal.
Now, I won't get into this too much because YouTube does not really like it, but Frank Castle is Italian, and if you do your research, John Bernthal is not. John Bernthal would be more suited to play, I don't know, The Thing. I'll just leave it at that.
That's what a Nazi would say.
Today though, let's look at his Batman Part 2 video because it's even more interesting to say the least.
So the spasticated Matt Reeves' Batman crime saga, the Penguin TV show, has won multiple Emmys. And on top of that, people are hyped for the gay Batman Part 2 starring Kurt Cobain.
I'm pretty sure Batman wasn't gay in that first movie there though. It looks like he had some pretty nice romantic tension with Catwoman and they even shared a kiss in the movie. But don't worry guys, clearly he was just gay for Commissioner Gordon the whole time or whatever, according to Ranting for Vengeance here. Our favorite grease boy never ceases to amuse me.
People bitch and whine about Nolan taking away the comic book elements of Batman, but in this overrated portrayal of the Penguin, Matt Reeves changed the character's name from a real name that people actually have just because he thought it sounded too comic booky.
Wait, what? Have you not watched The Batman? Matt Reeves' The Batman is legitimately the most comic accurate live action Batman film out there. The set design of Gotham City is absolutely perfect, and unlike the Nolan movies, it actually looks like a city you wouldn't want to live in. It manages to not be too fantastical looking, which is a trap that the Joel Schumacher films fell into, while still looking like a grimy, crime-ridden city that is pulled directly from the Batman comic books. In addition to this, Robert Pattinson's Batman, believe it or not, is one of the only live-action Batman that doesn't actually kill. Ben Affleck's, Michael Keaton's, Christian Bale's, and Val Kilmer's Batman have all killed people, and funny enough, the only other live-action Batman who hasn't killed someone is George Clooney, ironically enough.
They had the balls to give one of the greatest superheroes of all time a bat credit card?
Oh boy. And funny enough, because of this, it also ends up being one of the only Batman films where Batman has a very clear arc. I think the only other one that really very clearly shows this is more than likely either Batman Mask of the Phantasm or the Lego Batman movie, which are also genuinely great Batman films in their own right. The Batman is, bar none, the most comic-accurate live-action Batman film out there. Ranting for Vengeance admitted to us he didn't watch The Penguin, but I kind of feel like he didn't watch the Batman either. If he had, and if he actually read Batman comics like he claims, he'd probably know this is the most comic-accurate Batman has ever been.
Now, big anti-woke YouTubers are saying that The Penguin was one of the best things that DC has put out in the last 10 years. I don't really care for that whole anti-woke crowd. I think that they do a lot of grifting.
Oh yeah, and you're not doing that? Are you trying to say that somehow you're not an anti-woke grifter? Somehow Ranting for Vengeance has gone through the mental gymnastics and tried to claim that he isn't an anti-woke grifter. What? Brother, you are the textbook definition of an anti-woke grifter. Not even that, an anti-woke tryhard. It is so obvious you want to get picked up by the anti-woke crowd, and that's why you keep making these cringy videos. Either that or you have some pent-up frustrations that you don't know how to air out in a healthy manner, so that's why you make these cringy videos about comics and stuff. Which, to be honest, I think both explanations are true in this case. I'm just dumbfounded that Ranting for Vengeance of all people would try to make the claim that he's not an anti-woke grifter. This day just gets better and better.
They made Batman some gay weak nirvana, listener, filled with feminism and handicapped political inserts.
Huh? Where was the feminism in the Batman? The name of the movie is The Batman. The main character of the movie is the Batman. Are you really gonna try to tell me there's a feminist message there? I don't think so.
Next up on the chopping block of spastication, we have this Matt Reeves Batman fan account here. But anyway, this moron says, imagine trying to put white eyes on this. Yeah, I don't know what your point is. I can imagine it pretty well, because Batman has always had white eyes.
Wait, what? What is he even saying now? Batman has always had white eyes? Okay, so first of all, even if we're going with the cartoon argument, since he brings up Batman the Animated Series here, Bruce Wayne has always been depicted with either blue eyes or brown eyes. If we're taking that as a broad, sweeping statement, no, Batman does not have white eyes. But even if we're referring to when the cowl is up, that doesn't make much sense either, because he's comparing a cartoon to a live-action film. Even if we look at the very first 1989 Michael Keaton movie, or you know what, even the 1966 Adam West Batman movie, they don't use white eyes for that character. They just have the actor's eyes poke out through the cowl, and that's how it's always been with every live-action Batman actor. A big reason why something like Bruce Timm's animated Batman has white eyes but is still able to resonate and connect with the audience is because he can be drawn in a way where he's still very expressive despite having hollowed out eyes. That's a big reason why every live-action Batman hasn't had whited out eyes. It's because being able to see into Bruce Wayne's eyes and being able to see what he might be feeling in any given moment allows the audience to connect with that character in a way that actually might be pretty hard for a guy with a cowl over his head half the time. You can't pull off the same kind of expressiveness that you can with Batman's white eyes in the animated series, so you have to be able to see his eyes to be able to have that connection. That's called showing, not telling, something that Ranting for Vengeance I don't think is very familiar with. Much like Disparu and Nerd Cookies both, Ranting for Vengeance's negativity about the Batman Part 2 doesn't come from any place of passion or even real criticism. He, just like any other anti-woke grifter, is just trying to push their own agenda and trying to push out some forced hate on this movie before it even releases. But believe it or not, the Batman Part 2 and Tron Ares aren't the only upcoming movies that have had bad faith hate campaigns lobbed against them. Strangely enough, even the highly anticipated Christopher Nolan's Odyssey film, which comes out next year, has also run into this. Now you might be wondering, hey, wait a minute, isn't Christopher Nolan's Odyssey film really anticipated by a lot of people? Don't people like Christopher Nolan? Well, tell that to Metatron, who made an entire video complaining about the cast for this film and trying to start an anti-woke hate campaign against it. Oh boy, he sure had some interesting things to say in this video, so let's take a look at his general points here.
So Odyssey movie, they have got a dedicated Twitter. Matt Damon, I swear every time I pronounce this surname I think I'm pronouncing demon with an accent. Matt Damon is Odysseus, a film by Christopher Nolan, The Odyssey movie is in theaters July 17, 2026. But to be honest with you, Mr. Nolan, I don't know if we're gonna survive up to 2026 because people are gonna riot. I'll be honest with you. I'm not particularly impressed. In fact, I'm a little underwhelmed / disappointed with this. Okay, so let's talk about the armor, shall we? We know what Mycenaean armor would have looked like. Like, we've got a lot of examples here as just some of it. This looks awesome, by the way. I mean, could you imagine? Look at all the different helmets that he could have been wearing with the horns. Usually Hollywood loves horns. The one time they could have put the horns on top of those freaking helmets and still be accurate. No.
Okay, so right off the bat, Metatron seems to interpret the Odyssey more as a piece of history rather than a myth, and also tries to claim that the Odyssey should have historically accurate armor in it. The thing is though, the Odyssey isn't actual history whatsoever. It's one of the oldest recorded works of literature ever. It was famously written by the Greek poet Homer, which, while there is debate to his actual authorship for this work, he is often cited as the creator of the Odyssey. But the thing is, the Odyssey is also very famously a myth. It's not real history whatsoever. The Odyssey has fantastical creatures and elements like cyclopses, sirens, and nymphs. So why exactly are we trying to say that a story that is one of the best preserved examples of mythology out there should be historically accurate? Seems like a very odd gripe to have, but interestingly enough, this becomes more clear why he has this complaint later on.
Everything we know about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. The star-studded cast includes Matt Damon, Tom Holland, and Zendaya. I don't know who that is, but for a story that is nearly 3,000 years old, you'd think there wouldn't be much mystery surrounding Homer's The Odyssey. Already this statement, the older it is, the more mystery there is about it. By the way, it's the opposite logic, but yeah. But true to form for director Christopher Nolan, his upcoming project based on the Greek epic is already one of Hollywood's most anticipated releases. I don't know about that.
What? Have you not been researching this at all? The Odyssey is absolutely one of the most anticipated films of 2026. Heck, if you went on social media right now and asked people if they are more excited for Avengers Doomsday or The Odyssey, I think they would tell you The Odyssey, which is kind of insane that a Greek mythological drama has more hype behind it than an Avengers movie. But with how that movie's going, I think that's pretty valid. It feels like that Metatron just kind of jumped on this topic without really knowing much about Christopher Nolan's Odyssey whatsoever. He didn't even know who Zendaya was, and he doesn't even know that this is easily one of the most anticipated films of next year. And somehow he also doesn't know that the Odyssey text isn't supposed to be historically accurate. There's already a lot of grifter red flags here, and it seems like the real reason why he's doing this topic is already beginning to show. After this, he looks at some of the cast of the Odyssey and has some interesting things to say about their races.
I honestly would love it to see actual Greek actors. That's something I would love to see, to be honest.
So I find it funny that Metatron says this because if you look it up, there aren't actually that many well-known Greek actors in Hollywood. Pretty much the only two well-known actors out there that are in mainstream Hollywood and Greek are Zach Galifianakis and Jennifer Aniston, neither of which I think really fit the vibe that Nolan is trying to go for The Odyssey. If you actually do the research, which it appears Metatron didn't here, this comes off as a very silly complaint.
Lupita, alright, so clearly black actor. Now, if they can come up, I don't remember a black character in the Iliad.
Okay, first of all, Lupita is starring in the Odyssey, not the Iliad. It seems that Metatron forgot the story he was even talking about here. But also, I find this complaint really baffling because, funny enough, every previous adaptation of the Odyssey has actually had a black actress in it. Specifically, the nymph character Calypso has almost always been portrayed by a black woman in various adaptations of the Odyssey, such as the 1997 TV series and also Epic the Musical. And if you really want to count her, you could even count Tia Dalma from Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean movies as a version of Calypso, since she's revealed to be Calypso in those films. Although obviously she's quite different in Pirates of the Caribbean, since instead of being the goddess of her own island, she's the goddess of the entire sea. And she obviously has nothing to do with Davy Jones or pirates in the original source material, although she does have a connection with crabs in the Odyssey, so there is that. At least they got something right. But overall, all the most well-known versions of Calypso in the Odyssey are all black women, and Lupita is actually highly rumored, although not confirmed yet, to be playing Calypso in this movie. So honestly, Metatron's complaint here doesn't really make any sense, because even if Lupita isn't playing Calypso, there already has been a black actress in all the major versions of the Odyssey. So it doesn't really seem that crazy at all that there would be a black actress in Chris Nolan's version as well. And there are actually African-American characters in Greek mythology, such as Andromeda, who in her original Greek story actually was portrayed as a black woman. So it doesn't seem like too far of a stretch here at all, but it seems like Metatron is very averse to having black people in this movie.
Guy, I am curious to see a Colombian in the Odyssey. That's another thing that I am a little confused to see.
Funny enough, his complaint about John Leguizamo being in this cast also doesn't make much sense when again you look at the original cast of the 1997 Odyssey. Funny enough, this cast also included a Mexican actress, that being Paloma Beza. So if the original Odyssey TV series can have a Mexican actress in it and be well received, it kind of makes sense that Chris Nolan's version can have a Colombian actor and still be well received as well. It doesn't really seem like Metatron understands this though, and is judging all these actors based on their race rather than, well, them as actors and their skill. And this seems to be the basis of this entire hate train that Metatron is trying to start for Chris Nolan's Odyssey, simply that it has a diverse cast. He's not actually looking at anything in the story or anything else because, well, there's not really much information on the Odyssey to work with right now. So in order to create this grift and hate train, he's taken something that's one of the only things really known about this movie right now, that being the cast, and try to make it something that his audience should get upset at, even though it really isn't. So really, just like everyone else we've discussed here, this is a case of Metatron jumping to conclusions and also sprinkling in little bits of misinformation to try to deceive his audience and also create a sense of forced hate for this movie that's not even out yet. Metatron in general is a pretty polarizing figure in the history YouTube adjacent space. I also find it funny that he tried to claim at one point that his channel isn't about American politics.
Welcome back to my channel, this is the Metatron speaking, and today's topic is kind of a stronger, a little bit heavy topic if you will, because we're going to talk about slavery in history. The inspiration for this topic actually came from a whole situation that occurred in 2023, which is of course has to do with politics. Now, as you know, I don't discuss politics, even less so American politics.
Yeah, clearly all the videos you've been uploading recently don't have anything to do with American politics whatsoever. No way, that's totally not the case here. So far, all the people we've talked about in this video that are trying to create forced hate trains for movies are either anti-woke grifters or something very adjacent to that. But interestingly enough, this last one we're going to discuss here actually isn't an anti-woke grifter at all, but in a lot of ways is still a grifter. Enter DazzReviews, actually one of the most popular animation YouTubers out there. Daz is definitely a very interesting case since he's gone through a lot of changes with his content overall in the course of his channel existing. Daz initially started his channel about 13 years ago with a focus on gaming and Nintendo stuff in particular. The very first video that's actually available on his channel is an analysis of Pikmin 3's trailer from back in 2012. He actually made a lot of Pikmin content starting out, and I'll be completely honest, I think this is the better content he's made. Early on, he actually did a series of videos where he would analyze different video game cutscenes and talk about the filmmaking behind them. These I actually always found really interesting. He would often look at a video game cutscene and analyze it from a cinephile type perspective, and while not all these videos were necessarily the deepest things ever, a lot of them were pretty in-depth and surprisingly pretty good. I think two of my favorites that he did early on are both his Shadow of the Colossus analysis and also his Pikmin 1 and 2 analysis of the cutscenes in there. And again, while these videos weren't always the most in-depth, a lot of them did go into pretty good detail about what makes these cutscenes really work, and I think in a lot of ways introduced a lot of people to some of their first real film analysis and how to properly break down visual art. These videos are still by far my favorites that he's ever done, but unfortunately in recent years he's kind of become very notorious within the animation community. Because as I stated before, Daz actually started as a Nintendo and gaming channel. He didn't actually start doing animated content until about 6 years ago. Around this time, after uploading a video on the Crypt of the Necrodancer DLC, Cadence of Hyrule, he just so happened to upload a video about Toy Story 4. This video was called Toy Story 4 Did Something Unexpected, and what do you know, it got 1.2 million views. So naturally, after seeing this, Daz made a pretty drastic shift with his content, and instead of talking about gaming related stuff, he began talking about movies. We can see immediately after doing the Toy Story 4 video, he did videos on Jumanji 3 and Spider-Man Far From Home, which unfortunately didn't quite capture the same success as the Toy Story 4 video. After this, he did kind of go back to gaming content for a little bit, talking about potential gaming sequels and remakes for Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, Sonic Adventure 3, and Sonic Heroes 2, until, interestingly enough, he made a video called The Terrible Lego Movie Ripoff, which was a video about the Playmobil movie which had just released that year in 2019. And lo and behold, this became the most successful video on his channel, getting 4.6 million views. And from then on, Daz saw exactly what worked on his channel, covering animated content. Now, for the record, I actually don't think Daz is a bad person at all, and he's definitely not a toxic creator like a lot of the other people we've already discussed here. In general, he actually seems like a pretty pleasant person and pretty chill overall. I think the issue that a lot of the animation community has with him though is that a lot of his takes tend to be very shallow, and he often does tend to really farm outrage bait. I do think once he saw how profitable it was to have a video with the word terrible in the title, he started taking this approach to a lot of other videos on his channel as well. Even if you just take take a cursory glance at his channel, you can see that the word terrible is shoehorned into about a third of his videos overall. Like, instead of saying a movie is good, he'll just say Pixar's not terrible Ratatouille, or Disney's only not terrible Frozen movie, or DreamWorks' not terrible The Wild Robot. Come on, bro, just say it's good. This is definitely something a lot of people have caught on to with Dazz, since he just constantly seems to want to outrage farm and always use words like terrible or a lot of other very inflammatory words in his title. He's also ran multiple series on his channel before, but this has also been a problematic thing since a lot of the time with these series, he'll just take one idea and kind of run it into the ground. And usually after he does this, he'll just move on to another idea that he thinks he can turn into a series and then milk that for all it's worth as well. Probably a good example of this would be his ripoff series that he had on his channel previously. Technically, this started with his Playmobil movie review, which was called the Terrible Lego Movie Ripoff. After this, he started a full series about ripoff films such as the Terrible Toy Story ripoff, or the Terrible Amazing Hulk ripoff, or the terrible Animal Star Wars ripoff. For what it's worth, I actually found some of these early videos kind of interesting since he often tackled a lot of very obscure niche animated ripoff movies. But as time went on, people began to question the legitimacy of this series and what Dazz really considered a ripoff, especially when he started covering VeggieTales. Yep, believe it or not, DazzReviews actually covered VeggieTales at one point, specifically the Lord of the Beans episode. This video was included in his ripoff series. It was called the Terrible VeggieTales Lord of the Rings parody. And this video did not go over well, and rightfully so. It kind of seems like Dazz didn't really understand what VeggieTales is in this video and kind of just assumed it was another bad ripoff he could talk about for a video. The thing is though, VeggieTales as a series was known for making different spoofs of movies and shows to try to get good values across to kids. This is just something the show did all the time. They did it with Lord of the Rings, they did it with Sherlock Holmes, they did it with Don Quixote, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and so many more. While VeggieTales is a relatively niche series that is kind of mostly known through internet memes that mostly people that are either nostalgic for it or grew up with it, which I did, know about, you'd think Dazz would have at least done some research on the IP so he could properly review it for this video, but he didn't. And this is definitely one video where a lot of people started to see through the cracks of Dazz in general. I think one of the most notable things that I've seen him do personally though is rip on every Pixar movie before it even comes out. While he obviously doesn't create any kind of anti-woke hate train for a Pixar movie before it comes out, he does kind of go after them quite a bit to a rather absurd degree. Oftentimes he'll create 4 or 5 videos on a Pixar movie before it even comes out and before there's even that much known about it at all. This was something that a lot of people noted he did with both Elio and Elemental. And currently he's also giving Pixar's newest movie that's set to come out next year, Hoppers, the same treatment. Now I know I just gave a lot of background on Dazz, but I think it is really important to see exactly the kinds of problems as we look at his video on Hoppers here. Let's see what he had to say.
Guys, this is like Avatar. This is nothing like Avatar.
Ooh. I hate that in a Pixar script, I'll be honest. That's like a Marvel quip. Why is there Avatar in the Pixar universe?
Gee, I don't know, Dazz. Why is there an Empire Strikes Back reference in Toy Story 2? Why does the Lion King musical appear in A Bug's Life? Why is there an Apple computer in The Incredibles, and why is there a Totoro in Toy Story 3? And why does Wall-E watch a full scene from Hello Dolly in his movie of the same name? Clearly we're asking the important questions about this movie here, right? In all seriousness, this does come off as rather nitpicky from Dazz because not only have Pixar movies referenced things plenty of times before, he's simply picking up the fact there's a pop culture reference within the dialogue here since there's not really anything else for him to try to complain about and try to create a hate train for this movie with. We don't really know much about Hoppers at all yet since we only have this first trailer to work off of. So it does kind of just come off as him being very reactionary and just reacting to every little thing that he can within this trailer.
And they were in the same den.
No. Oh, they're showing vines to us. And they were roommates.
Vines? Dude, that's just a generic adultery joke. Pretty sure people have been hanging socks on the doorknobs long before Vine existed.
I'm gonna say it right now. I have a lot of concerns for Hoppers.
Wow, so it only took 2 lines of dialogue for you to get real concerned about Hoppers, huh? I'd hate to see what you're like after 3 here.
You've heard it probably so far. The visuals, the originals, the scale, the storytelling, the narrative plot device.
But the thing is, we don't know anything about the storytelling or the narrative for Hoppers yet because the movie isn't out. Even though Dazz isn't an anti-woke grifter, he's still falling into the same trap that all the other guys did. He's judging the movie before it's even out and making his own narrative about it to spin to his audience before the film even releases and with little to no information on it. All we really have to work off with Hoppers here is this first trailer, which honestly isn't that much. There isn't a lot of information given even in this first first trailer. All we know is that this girl is going to be jumping into a beaver's body and then hanging out with a bunch of woodland animals. We don't know the girl's name, we don't know why she's doing this, we don't know who these scientists are, and we don't know what the purpose of this project is overall. If Daz realized that, he'd probably wait till we got the answers to those questions before jumping to conclusions about hoppers, but he's not doing that. There's no real legitimate reasoning behind this hate train that you're trying to create here. And ultimately, that's the big issue with every single hate train that we've seen on this video so far. While a movie like Tron Ares absolutely has things you could very legitimately talk about as real concerns for it, like Jared Leto, the people talking about that movie aren't complaining about that. They're just complaining about quote-unquote girl bosses and the lack of a quote-unquote masculine legacy, apparently. With Superman, which we discussed at the very start of this video, the only real reason the hate train started for that was from the Snyderbros and the anti-woke grifters. The Snyderbros started hating on it because Zack Snyder wasn't directing the film, and the anti-woke grifters tried to create a hate train for it because of the fact that James Gunn said this was an immigrant story. Which is funny because if they'd actually read his Superman comic, they'd probably realize Superman has always been an immigrant story. The only reason that Ranting for Vengeance was trying to create a hate train for the Batman Part 2 is because he thought it was going to be woke propaganda. When, funny enough, if he actually read the comics, he'd probably realize that the things he calls Batman woke for are actually in the comics as well. And because of that, the Batman is one of the most comic-accurate Batman films out there. Metatron only tried to create the hate train against the Odyssey because he didn't like that there was a diverse cast in it. He wasn't really judging it off of its quality as a film at all because, well, there's not really much known about the film yet, and the film's not even out yet. And ultimately, Daz did the same thing as well with Hoppers, although just not from an anti-woke angle, simply from an angle of trying to spark outrage for a Pixar movie that's not even out yet. So what exactly does real film discourse look like before a film actually releases? Well, ultimately it starts with keeping in mind that the trailer is going to be different from the final product. I think especially today, it's very easy for someone to get sold on someone else's idea of what a film will be like just based on what they're saying about the trailer, or in a lot of cases with these grifters, just making up about it. However, instead of simply jumping to conclusions about a film or believing what a grifter might be trying to sell you on about it, ultimately the best thing to do always is just wait for the film to come out to be able to form a full opinion on it. Because really anything before that can't really be indicative of the film itself. But ultimately that will only get you so far. You truly do have to see the film to be able to get the full picture and be able to form a full opinion on it. There should be a distinct difference between judging a film's trailer and judging the film itself. I think perhaps one of the best examples of this in recent memory is a film like Transformers 1. Transformers 1 is a film that when people saw the first trailer, a lot of people hated that trailer. And personally, I do see why. This film did not have the best marketing whatsoever. The trailer didn't give us that in-depth of an idea what the final product would look like, and also had a lot of cringy jokes that I remember a lot of people pointing out. However, lo and behold, the film actually comes out, and a lot of people really like Transformers 1, and a lot of people even say it's the best Transformers movie by far. And funny enough, even to this day, it is still the best reviewed Transformers film, and a lot of people were instantly clamoring for a sequel. However, both because of the bad marketing and a lot of the pre-release film hate that this movie got, a lot of people didn't bother to go see it, resulting in this film failing at the box office despite, by all merits, being a good movie. And as a result, even though a sequel had been planned before and a lot of people wanted it after seeing the movie, it got scrapped because the money wasn't there and people didn't show up. They'd already heard a lot of negative things in the marketing from people like the anti-woke grifters and decided to just make their mind up then and there and not go see the film or give it a chance. So as you can see, there is a real danger to this kind of grifting and misinformation and this kind of forced pre-release film hate, especially when the film in question actually ends up being something that people really like. So at the end of the day, don't make up your mind on a movie just because of something you hear a grifter say online. Watch the film for yourself and come to your own conclusion on it. Only then can you determine for yourself whether it was good or bad in your eyes. I think once we start to see more people doing that, film discourse will start to be a lot less biased and more legit and far less toxic too. And ultimately, that's why I do these hunting Griftly Bears videos. I want more people to be aware of what real criticism is and whether they may be watching a grifter when they realize it or not. This is a much longer hunting Griftly Bears video than I normally do, so I appreciate you watching if you came to the very end here. And I appreciate all of you for supporting the Hunting Griftly Bears series overall. I'm more than happy to keep doing these and hopefully encouraging real criticism. Thanks everybody. But what do you think? Am I wrong? Are these guys actually real critics? Do these movies actually deserve the hate or do they not? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like and also consider subscribing to see more content like this. I do a lot of videos on film and animation overall, so if you like this video, you'll probably like the other ones I have planned as well. I'm thinking of maybe making a follow-up to this video talking about gaming, so if you want to see a video on pre-release game hate, let me know in the comments below. You can also follow me on all the socials down below, or consider supporting me on Patreon or as a YouTube member. Patrons and YouTube members get access to my Discord and also get to pick what things I cover next. Special thanks to all my patrons and YouTube members on screen currently. I appreciate y'all pitching in with the extra monetary effort to keep me doing what I do here. And I appreciate you for coming to the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it or learned something new from it. But for now, I've been Otterly Noah, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye!